computer. I'm going to share and
You got this all figured out.
yeah. All right. So how does that look to everybody? Is it okay?
Good.
All right.
Good.
So, yes, so here we are before and after King James, a history of the Bible in English, and it'll be a 3-week series. And actually, before we get into the meat of it, I wanted to just cover a few sort of technical details. All right, so I mean, we're sort of calling this series, hopefully there will be more as the year goes on, Covenant Virtual Learning and Lunch. Of course, you know, we would like to be at Covenant in the lounge, you know, with some lunch, like, you know, Mona has made some lunches that we've shared. We've had Donato's Pizza and so on, but of course, during coronavirus times, you know, we're not doing that. So we'll host the learning, but you will need to get your own lunch. And so I hope you do that. But it is good to be getting back into the Sunday adult education opportunities during these strange times of coronavirus and Zoom. So welcome to this 3-part series on the history of the Bible in English. And so administrative things, this is today my first time as a Zoom host. So, you know, might have a little stage fright, a little bit of awkwardness, but, you know, bear with me. Planning right after church today, next Sunday, and the Sunday after. And the same Zoom invitation link should work all 3 times. And I will actually, I didn't today, but I'll probably launch the meeting a little early. Feel free to just jump on and chat or whatever if you wish. I have shared the Zoom link with some friends and family beyond Covenant, so there could be some unfamiliar faces and names as well. Now, questions are welcome. Just be advised, I'm not totally sure how quickly I will see your questions via chat. Mona is going to try to kind of monitor if you do have any questions that you type in the chat. Bear with me, and certainly glad to entertain anything that you want to ask. And like I mentioned, the sessions will be recorded for potential later viewing. There's a good chance that I will have PDFs of slides and materials to send after the session, you know, if you're so inclined. Most of the time together is actually going to be PowerPoint, and then sometimes I'll get out of the PowerPoint and I have some kind of show and tell type items to do live with you. So, all right. So here we are. Now let's look at this image on the right-hand side of the slide. You might be wondering what this is. A lively picture describing the weight and substance of God's most blessed word against the doctrines and vanities of man's tradition. Okay, well, this is actually a woodcut illustration, an image from a famous book by John Fox called The Book of Martyrs, which is published first in 1563, and it is essentially a work of Protestant history and martyrdom in England, because the introduction of Protestantism, the break from Catholicism in England, was a particularly violent and bloody and horrendous affair. And this book was actually the largest publishing project ever undertaken in England to that point. Over 1,800 pages, many woodcut illustrations chronicling the dastardly deeds of the Catholic Church in trying to suppress. And so look at this image now. You see on in the middle, you've got Justice. See the little heading up there? Justice blindfolded with a sword, holding the scale, as we're familiar with that image. And on the right, you see things like Catholics and sort of worldly, you know, people all assembled there, as well as sort of churchy people. And then on the left side, Well, for one thing, there seems to be a halo, so that's probably Jesus, and sort of more common looking people. But look at the way the scale is tilted. It's tilted to the left, and you see, if you can read, that it's a pretty small print, but the thing that is winning out here is the Word of God. Verbum Dei, I think, if I'm reading it. The point is that the 16th century was nothing less than a struggle for, sort of religious freedom belonging to, the faithful, the faith, on the individual level, freed from sort of the shackles of the church. And so this is, I thought, a nice image to get us into the subject matter, because mostly we're going to be talking about the 16th century and all the Bibles produced during that tumultuous, bloody century. Okay. So, all right, quickly, what we're planning on for the 3 weeks. Today, we're going to focus on, we're going to go way back. You know me. I like to go back, kind of to the very beginnings of everything. So we're going to start with sort of the origin of the Bible as we know it, sort of ancient to medieval times. Look at the first few translations of the Bible into English, the very first Bibles that came about after the invention of printing in the 1450s. Okay. Next week, then, we'll really hit the sequence of pre-King James Bibles of the 1500s. Look a little bit at Bibles in other languages. We might actually get to that today. And then basically reach the publication of the King James Bible, the first one in 1611. Week 3 then will be sort of some more show and tell and discussion with the King James of 1611. And then really, then there's another 400 years that we have with the King James Version after that, as well as, of course, as you all know, a variety of other translations of the Bible into English. So, all right. So the Bible in English. Okay, first of all, I think it's key to understand the Bible in terms of the languages it was written in, the original languages, okay? So essentially, this is a whole lot of history compressed on one little slide, but in a nutshell, the earliest Judaic texts, of course, were Hebrew and Aramaic in origin. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Those texts got translated into Greek, and then essentially Greek into Latin. Okay, so now we have about 2,000 years of copies of copies of copies of sacred texts made by hand. Okay, this is individual scribes, monks, learned people writing every copying one from another. Print not invented until the 1450s. Okay, and then hand in hand with that, we have the Roman Catholic Church is essentially the spiritual leader of most of Europe for over 1,000 years, roughly the 400s to the 1400s AD. Okay, now our Bible as such, the books of the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, were essentially canonized in the 4th century, meaning the 300s in terms of years. Now, the language of the early church then was actually the language of the oppressive Roman Empire, right? Latin. Latin was the language of the church, and the language of education, and the language of the state. Anything basically written, any text, in Western Europe in the Middle Ages, for the most part, are in Latin. Okay, next piece of the puzzle for us, we have St. Jerome's translation of the Bible into Latin around 400 AD. And that's an important moment, an important thing that happened. The St. Jerome version of the Bible is commonly called the Vulgate. And you hear that word and you might be tempted to think it's, vulgar or something like that. Well, it's simply, it means basically sort of the common version. It was the definitive version of the Bible. Okay. Eventually, and by eventually, I mean many centuries later, the vernaculars, what people actually speak, English, French, German, and so on, the vernaculars would eventually have Bibles in those languages, translated into those languages, but it took a long time. So again, we're going to look at how, when, and why the Bible was translated into English. And we're going to culminate, I promise, not today, but what we're working towards, kind of at the centerpiece, is the King James Bible of 1611. Probably the best and best known Bible in English or maybe in any language.
King James Bible. You don't?
I don't remember it, no.
You all might want to mute yourself, please. We're hearing a little bit of echo and so. All right, thanks. So the King James Version. Now, the thing is, there were many English versions of the Bible before 1611 and many after 1611. And it's important to remember, like Luther's German Reformation, the Bible is tied to the history of book printing invented by Gutenberg in Germany in the 1450s. All right, so let's look at the earliest English, Old English, aka Anglo-Saxon. So linguistically, English is actually construed as a Germanic language, so it's related in its earliest form to German, Dutch, Danish, Swedish, Norwegian, Icelandic, and so on. The existence of Old English is really dated from around 600 AD to roughly 1100 AD. There's no exact boundaries on these years, of course. Very limited number of texts in Old English actually survive. Really, Old English is primarily a spoken language. There is no writing of Old English until the runic inscriptions, which were a very ancient writing system that was not used by very many people. And additionally, medieval monks, clerics, educated people started trying to capture English, Old English, by using the Latin alphabet. So in Old English, there is no complete Bible preserved, but there are parts that are translated into Old English, for example, in sermons or small texts like that. In the 8th century, so the 700s, the Venerable Bede, a British theologian, translated the Gospel of John into Old English. We've heard that. We've read that he did that. We don't actually have that text. It is lost. Late in the 9th century, there was a king, Alfred the Great, who did a lot of writing, or a lot of the writing of the Old English texts that we have. He translated the Psalms and the 4 Gospels, and we do have good portions of those. So here's just a little snippet from a text that's pretty familiar, the Lord's Prayer. I'll just read that to you real quick. Fader ure, thu the earth on heavenum, our Father, you who are in the heavens, si thine nama gehalgud, thy name be hallowed, tobekuma thine riche, let your kingdom become, wertha thine willa on earthan swa on heavenum, let your will be on earth just as in the heavens. So, just a little snippet. Doesn't look very much like English at all, does it? Well, there's a dramatic change of English after the Norman conquest of 1066 AD, essentially a French invasion with accordingly a massive influx of French, Latin, sort of Latin-based words. And so that's the time and that's the phenomenon that we associate with the origins of Middle English, okay, sort of the medieval, the later medieval English. Think about Chaucer. Think about the Canterbury Tales. That idiom. And so there are miscellaneous Bible selections translated and adapted into Middle English in the 13th century. And in fact, according to Wikipedia, good source for us, there are 18 early partial English translations of biblical texts, and that's the cutoff on that was to basically about 1484. However, interestingly, also there's over 100 complete Bibles in English from essentially 1400 to today. So there's a whole lot. All right, 14th century. Wycliffe's Bible. Let's look at this. On the right, you see an image from one of the manuscripts from the Bible that we're talking about. And sort of halfway down the page, you see a great big I. And let me see it. Let me read that to you. Okay. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was at God, and God was the Word. This was in the beginning at God. All things were made by him, and so on. So that sounds familiar, right? Gospel of John. So there you have it. Now let's talk about this Wycliffe and his Bible. So this was a Bible translation into Middle English under the direction of a theologian and reformer named John Wycliffe, and you see it spelled a couple different ways. He lived from approximately to 1328 until 1395 when he met a violent end, shall we say. A busy, learned, popular scholar and preacher. There is, in fact, no evidence that he translated himself. He put his friends up to it. It was kind of the first crowdsourcing, perhaps, that we have, right, in history. Probably not the first, but hey, So they call it Wycliffe's Bible because he was the driving force behind it. But this part of what's called the Lollard movement, which is kind of a derogatory term for troublemakers, pre-Reformation, rejecting many of the Catholic teachings, with the audacity to say and to think that the Bible should be in the language that the people speak so that they can read and understand on their own. And that is radical thinking in the 1,000-year-old church. Now, Wycliffe's Bible is based on that Latin Vulgate that we mentioned by St. Jerome from around 400 AD. Wycliffe's Bible was popular, and we know that because, in fact, there are more than 250 portions or complete hand-copied manuscripts that survive today. I mean, so that's a lot. That's usually how we sort of gauge how popular and important a medieval text was, is how many manuscripts of it do we have today? Again, we're still before book printing. So this is individual scribes sitting and making copy after copy after copy of the Bible. And this is New Testament only. I mean, it's not the whole Old Testament. All right. Of course, it was suppressed by the English king and the Catholic Church, and there's quite a bloody and terrible history associated with that. And by the way, I've got a link here too that's a very nice transcription online of the Wycliffe Bible that I thought I would just include if you want to check that out. Okay, so now here's the thing. Our focus on the history of Bibles is really a story more of Bibles as printed books. Now, printing was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz, Germany in the 1450s. He was a metalsmith, along with getting into this printing stuff. He is the first person who put together kind of a magical combination in the 1450s. Actually, he was at it maybe in the 1440s. There's a lot of research on that. Okay, you take a Chinese invention of paper. You take black ink, which is pretty well known from medieval, scribes and, from writing in the Middle Ages. And here's the metalsmith part. You take reusable little metal letters like A, B, C, D, E, little metal letters that you've poured out of sort of an amalgam of metals that can be molded into those letters. And you stick those letters together on essentially a frame. You take the whole text and frame it, and then you put ink on the letters, and you position some paper over that. And, in winemaking, they had a kind of a screw style press to squeeze the grapes. And there's a fair amount of wine making and wine culture in central Germany, and that, so it's, it all comes together. It makes sense. And so you put this together, and you've got the printing press with these pages on paper, and voila. I give you the invention. And so that sounds like a lot of work, but isn't that ingenious? Can you believe it? And here's the thing. Gutenberg's first book was, in fact, a Bible. It was the Latin Bible, again, St. Jerome's Vulgate. So the first book ever printed was, again, our 1,000-year-old Latin Bible by Jerome. Okay. And actually, I'm going to stop the sharing for a minute and do a little show and tell. All right. Hey, everybody, looking a little bigger now. So, all right. So over here, I've got okay. Volume 1. Look at the size of this. Now this is a facsimile reprint of the Gutenberg Bible. I don't have like $5 million to spend, so I don't own Gutenberg, but a facsimile, which is an exact reproduction of one of the splendid copies that has survived. And so if you open and look into it, this is what it looks like. You notice 2 columns and just lots and lots of words. And oh, hang on, there's more. Volume 2 is almost as big. And let's see. So you get some weightlifting exercise in this as well. Okay. So I'll try to hold it up so that you can see here. You see now, you might be thinking, if you've seen medieval books or images of medieval manuscripts and stuff, you notice that basically this looks like a medieval manuscript, doesn't it? I mean, that's what it looks like, a medieval manuscript, but it isn't. It's a printed book. And so about 200 copies, it's estimated, were made of the Bible. It took them about 2 years, but about, like I say, about 200 Bibles in Gutenberg's first run. And the thing is, it probably would take a single monk 2 years to make a copy of the complete Bible. That's kind of an estimate that's been made of 2 years full-time writing. Well, so 200 Bibles, that would take 400 man-hours of writing, right? Is that right? So, 400 years of writing, or 2 years. That's the great spectacular advance of the invention of printing. And in fact, they really wanted to make it be like just a handier version of the medieval manuscript as a textual format. And in fact, you can see up here, there's some colored sort of headings. And in fact, this is the beginning of the Gospels right here. And so this is the start right there, where there's some hand-painted little flourish there. I know that Gutenberg experimented with dual printing of black and then red ink, but there wasn't enough need for the red, and so I think they basically gave up on that pretty early and went instead to just hand writing of those red headings like that. So anyway, so there you have it, and it's about probably 15 pounds there between the two of them. So there you have it. Any questions about Gutenberg, printing, or what we've talked about so far?
Was Gutenberg innately a religious man?
No, I don't think so. I think he wanted to make money, and doing stuff for the church was probably a pretty good way to make money. And so that's my understanding.
Did the church sanction his printing of the Bible? I mean, were they in on it from the beginning?
That's a great question. And I think that frankly, I just don't know that they were aware or like really very tied into it, particularly, well, probably they wouldn't have even understood the implication of it. So probably it was, it was like, well, okay, whatever this goofy printer wants to do. But of course, then, and the thing is, it's a very conservative project that was produced. So, I would think the church probably had kind of a hot and cold feeling about the printing press, depending on what was being printed, because certainly producing 200 copies efficiently of the holy text of St. Jerome, that would supply Bibles for a lot of churches, and so there you have it. All right. Okay, going back to my slides now, unless there's any other questions. Okay. So I mentioned this before, but it's worth saying again that in focusing on basically 1500s, especially to 1700s in England, we're really in the shadow of Martin Luther's German Reformation that was launched in 1517. Okay, so some 60 years after the invention of printing. So of course, Luther's printing was highly problematic, highly contentious, very opposed by the church. But that's because of what a troublemaker he was, and not necessarily because of the inherent issues of printing the sacred text or anything like that. So now let's pause for a minute and think. I'm going to anticipate a little of the kinds of things we're going to see as we explore Bibles in English. There's sort of various sources for the various English Bibles, and just kind of keep these ideas in mind. Most immediate or obvious perhaps would be that, of course, we've got to get Hebrew to Greek to Latin into English. Okay, and so the words of Jesus are sort of translated about 3 times by the time we get English. Now, we're also going to see several cases, interestingly, of English Bibles that are essentially reworked, revised, based on other English versions. Okay. Additionally, we do have some influence of non-English, other vernacular Bibles, notably Luther's German Bible of the 1520s and 30s. So keep in mind that the Bible is not a 100% solid, unambiguous single text. There's really a lot of different versions and manuscripts and prints and languages and lots going on with it. And by the way, we're focusing on England, but largely it's fair to say that the fate of the Bible in English in England is sort of a shared fate and history with English language churches in the United States, Scotland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, essentially the quote, English speaking world. And of course, each of those countries, like the United States, for example, has kind of its own traditions and things that come up. I mean, the Mormons, for example. So, all right. Just incidentally, after the invention of printing, I kind of pulled these dates together. Here are the dates of the earliest printed Bibles in the major European vernacular languages. And I've got a little map on the right-hand side there, just to give you kind of a flavor of this. Remember, the first printed book of all is the Gutenberg Bible of the Latin Vulgate in the 1450s. The very first German Bible, now the first German Bible is not by Martin Luther. A lot of people think that, well, Martin Luther translated the Bible into German. Well, he did, but a lot of other people had done it already. The first German Bible is by a publisher named Mentelin in Strasbourg in 1466. So very quickly after the invention of printing. And incidentally, that's the first printed Bible in any modern language, is that German one. Italian. Italy was very big, very early embracer of print technology. So there is an Italian Bible printed in Venice in 1471 already. French, not far behind, Lyon, 1473 to 78, New Testament only. And the first French Protestant Bible, incidentally, would come along in 1535. In Dutch, we have an Old Testament in 1477, whole Bible in 1526. Czech, Jan Hus translated the New Testament in 1475, whole Bible in 1488. Spanish Bible was first printed in Basel, Switzerland in 1569. The first complete Bible in English is the version of Coverdale, and we're going to talk about him probably next week. And it was printed, well, it's a weird story, but it was Zurich or Antwerp with some trouble in between 1535 to 1537. So, all right. So now we come to the first printed Bible in English by William Tyndall. There are basically two printings of it, 1526 and 1534. He's construed as the controversial father of the English Bible. He wanted to do the Old Testament. He worked on it, but he didn't get it done. He translated Erasmus's 1516 Greek New Testament into English. And Tyndall's first edition was published in Germany, 1526, far too controversial to print an English Bible in England. He was influenced by Luther's New Testament that first came out in 1522. So you notice, think about Martin Luther, essentially launching the Reformation famously in 1517. And Luther then proceeded to write many texts, publish many texts, translated the whole Bible into German in the 1520s. And that is a watershed moment that carries over directly then to the English history. Because indeed, look what year we're at, 1526. Okay. So Tyndall's first edition was a print run of around 3,000. And sold but confiscated and burned in England. There was an influential second edition in 1534. Tyndall was burned at the stake in 1536. And I want to point out, remember that we talked about the Wycliffe Bible in manuscript based on St. Jerome. Okay. This changed to Erasmus's Greek New Testament as the source for Tyndall. That's really important because, in fact, in the medieval church, so to speak, the church suppressed the knowledge that the original New Testament was in Greek. Okay, that was actually not known. That was sort of viewed as dangerous to know that, you know, the Gospels of Jesus Christ are actually originally a Greek text. So Jerome's Vulgate Latin version was treated as the official, the source, the ultimate source. And so there you have it. Now, this Tyndall was very influential, was the source for a lot of the language in the King James Version, with such famous phraseology as, ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find. In fact, there's a nice statistic I read that 83% of the 1611 King James New Testament derives from Tyndall. Okay, and so now I'm going to stop sharing again. I have another show and tell. All right, so you remember Gutenberg,
Yeah.
This monster. You might think, wow, such a monumental task William Tyndall undertook. Well, here's Tyndall. Here's the size of my hand. So this is a facsimile. Again, I don't have like $5 million, so I don't own a copy of Tyndall. I own the facsimile of it that, you know, is like $25 or whatever. So again, Tyndall was a scholar of Greek, and you did not use Jerome's Vulgate. The Catholic Church suppressed it. This is from the version 1526, printed in Worms, Germany, which is just up the river from Mainz, where Gutenberg had worked, incidentally. And it is estimated that there were 30,000 of these bad boys in England by 1534. And so let me show you a little bit. Again, I'm going to try and, you know, hold it up so you can get a sense of it. This copy, by the way, I mentioned 30,000 in existence in the 1530s. Today, there are only 3 copies of this still existing.
Ooh.
And only, at least one of those is a partial. It's missing a bunch of pages. 30,000 to 3.
Ooh.
That gives you a little insight about medieval manuscripts. The more manuscripts you have, the more popular the text. On the other hand, with the popular medium of printed books, the more popular the book, the fewer copies in general we have. Isn't that weird? This seems counterintuitive, but think about it. You've got the New Testament. You've got this handy little book right here. These were used, read, shared, you know, they were so convenient. And so basically the most popular early printed books tended to get just used up, used and used and used until they just literally crumbled. So yeah, so there's only 3, and this one is in fact missing the title page. It's got this right here, but there is a title page that only exists in one of the 3 copies, and I can read to you, though, what the original title page is: "The New Testament, as it was written and caused to be written by them which heard it, to whom also our Savior Jesus Christ commanded that they should preach it unto all creatures." That's the title on the missing title page. And then look at this, you get right into the Gospel of St.
Matthew.
and so on. I mean, and so this is really, can you get a sense how they've literally reproduced each page? And so again, this is actual size that's being produced. So here's my hand and here's the text.
Wow.
So this right here, this is the New Testament in your hand in 1526. This is like, you know, cutting edge iPhone of the 1520s for the spiritual life, right? This is a radical revolution right here. And in fact, it's funny, we're still sort of attracted to that because even today, like on college campuses, you've seen them, right? You probably have, like, there was a lot of green ones in the 1970s and 80s. The little New Testament, there it is. It's exactly Tyndall. I mean, that is what, and then here's one actually that is Mona's,
Worn out.
and it's pretty worn out. So I'm holding it carefully because some things might fall out if I'm not careful. But so there you go. That's sort of the sort of change from big Bible to small Bible. But on the other hand, the small Bible is one that a bunch of people get to read. So maybe that makes it the bigger text as far as impact and meaning in people's lives, right? So, okay, I'm going to go back to slides now, sharing. Here we go. And I see we're right up about 1 o'clock, so my time is good. Just about wrapping up for today. Oh yes, in fact, that was there we go. That was where I wanted to get through today. So you see, we've gone to the very beginnings of the Bible, from Latin especially, but talking about the Greek and Hebrew origins as well. And then the earliest move to get Bibles into the vernaculars, the people's languages, and get them in print, which made all the difference in terms of disseminating the word. So, so there you have it. I mean, I'd welcome any questions or discussion or anything like that. And of course, next week we'll just pick up right there and move through the strange and violent 16th century and, you know, things like that. So good. All right. So.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, I appreciate your interest and you know, I enjoy doing these kinds of things because I sort of learn and remember things that I probably learned a long time ago and forgot. So, any questions, thoughts? Do any of you have really old Bibles in your house?
It's unmuted. I just had one quick question.
Sure.
When you showed the smaller People's Bible,
Yep.
the 30,000 copies,
Yep.
what were the side notes in them?
Oh.
Side note.
Oh, you know what? I did see that. Yes, there's a bunch of, those are handwritten, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so whoever owned this particular copy
I see.
seems to have done that because the you can see that the block of printing is very clearly defined. Just the text block, and incidentally, in the Tyndall Bible, we do have the division into chapters. Okay, like the same chapters of the Bible we have now. But yes, I believe that these are just little annotations that were handwritten in to this copy. And well, here's a page where there's a little bit of just kind of doodling on the. I mean, so you know, these would have been highly treasured, highly personalized possessions. So anyway, yeah. Oh, and here's
His parents.
this was kind of.
Yep.
Kind of high class. Look at this nice little illustrations come along at the beginnings of books and chapters and so on. This is this is the beginning of actually John the Revelator, and Yeah. So anyway, so incidentally, I think, let me see, we are all covenant people except you see my parents, Guy and Helen Conley from
Hi.
Denver. And so glad they're joining us today also. So good. So what else? What else do you want to talk about?
We're done. Well,
Hey, David, I have a question.
Sure.
So for next week or the next week after that, do we have to request an invite or will you automatically invite us? How
You should-
would that be handled?
Yeah, keep the same email. Like I
Okay.
said, I'm brand new at this, but it's my understanding if you
I am
keep
too.
that invitation, that one, that should work for all of them. Because
Okay.
when I set it up as a series of 3 meetings. And so, and the thing is, if you have any trouble, can't find it, just email me,
we're 10.
right before next week, because I'll be watching email, and so I can just resend the link as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank
So
you.
yeah.
Thank you,
Good.
David.
Very
Thank
good.
you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
You bet.
Hi, Mona back there. Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
Mona.
Nice to see you, Jay. Nice to see you. Hello.
Thanks. Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Hi, Kat.
Sheila. Bye.
Bye.
Well, it's pretty cool.
That's nice.
Wait, if they're
Oh,
there,
wait.
are they
Oh,
staying?
they are, yeah.
Are you staying?
Oh, hey, are you still there?
We're here. We're here.
Well, yeah, everyone else is gone, so we could just chat and stuff if you like.
Well, wonderful job there, David.
Thanks. Well, this
Really?
is kind of how I do these. It's weird to do it sitting here rather than in person.
I suppose, but you handled it well. Really, really nice.
So, well,
So
yeah.
Jocelyn's room is certainly changed.
Right.
It's really looking nice.
Well,
It's better.
well, yeah. You notice
Somewhat.
the wooden Connolly's sign up there.
Oh, sitting right there. I did.
From here, we can't read that.
Yeah,
From
yeah.
there,
Kind of like
it just looked like a.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it looked like just like a box.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I didn't know it was a
Right.
sign.
Oh,
And
that's
then-
Very
pretty
good.
neat.
Very
And
good.
then there's that cool crucifix, which came, believe it or not, from Weldon Adams.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
and he had a bunch of stuff in a, they downsized homes, and this is
Yeah.
several years ago, and he
Yeah.
had Madeline come over because he wanted to give her a bunch of music, and we went, and he was kind of
Yeah.
off all this stuff that was out in this garage, at this
Yeah.
home, and so so I got that.
Well, I got a few books along that line for one of my birthdays.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yes.
Do you still have them?
I have most. The best one was some things about individual hymns
Mhm.
and the origins of them.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Really, very, very good.
Yep. So.
So how about your big roosters back there? What are those guys
Oh,
doing?
you know what? Those are actually Jocelyn's, and she just got them at a garage sale or something.
You just liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's sort of Jocelyn.
That kind of neat.
yeah. They are.
They're fine.
So
So the bookcase, is that full of CDs or what are they?
it is mostly CDs, and in fact, I don't think you've seen this, but remember the huge plunder of Super Audio CDs from 2014?
Yeah, we do.
And I was selling them on Amazon and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, that guy, that house, he had this this
Oh,
shelf.
yes.
And so I
Yes.
bought it for, I don't know, it was like $40 or something. And it's
Yeah.
really, really nice one.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so there you have
Well,
it.
things look, well, you've done a nice job. This is a nice
Yeah.
setting for you here.
Pretty
It
good.
is. Yeah, sure.
Had no idea you had a big old Gutenberg Bible sitting around your house. Should have guessed.
Well, I actually ordered that not that long ago, maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
It was this publisher called Taschen, which
Okay.
they do a lot of kind of art books. And
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
this is kind of,
They've been around for a long time.
yeah, this big box set deal. And
Yeah.
so I just saw that and thought it was pretty cool, and it was, on sale and stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, very good.
so.
Well,
anyway.
you handled this very well. I mean, are you surprised there were not more people that joined in? Are they not comfortable with doing this kind of format, you suppose?
Yeah, I think there is some of that. I mean, we tried to get the word out and, send
Yeah.
emails and stuff. And there are some people who do like to come to my things who are older
I
and
mean,
Yeah, would not be comfortable with that.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
So-
well, you-
oh, yeah. So
I was just
Mona
thinking
pulling
I'd
up here.
come up a little bit.
Yeah.
Good, very good. Well,
Yeah.
Well,
well,
The other thing we should probably figure out is the first time, probably if people haven't done much with Zoom,
yeah,
might have
yeah,
trouble or something.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
don't know that anybody did, but he did have several people that you gave the information to
Yep.
that weren't there, right?
well, yeah, well, there's a little bit of trickiness